don't sell the journey, sell the destination. You want to grow your business. You don't care about the details and what it means. You want more clients. You want more deeper relationships. You want more brand awareness. Kind of this weird no man's land where they're too small that no one pays attention to them, but they also don't have the mindset or the capacity or the capabilities of like taking it to the next level. And so when it comes to presenting anything about your business, you better have a banging design.
Well, Ernesto, thanks for coming back on the podcast. It's been a minute. What's new in your life?
Well, I have a baby, I have a book, and I have a booming business. So
I was hoping for the alliteration. Congratulations.
I honestly didn't even try it. I was on the second and I was like, okay, another B, quick.
It was a
Thank you.
crossword puzzle. I was wondering what that third B was going to be. You have a very talented designer you work with. I've always been a fan of your websites. I still like the previous one, but the new one is, I think, equally, if not even more well designed. Just kind of off topic somewhat, but what's kind of goes into your mindset as a business owner with a storefront, if you will, of a website?
And we'll get into the 5 recipes later, but like the first recipe we talk about with transformation, it's like, okay, how are you providing that really memorable experience for someone? And so one of the tips that I give people when you are providing an amazing customer experience is to proudly present your brand. And so when it comes to presenting anything about your business, you better have a banging design, like eye-catching design that person, I mean, you're like, I still remember your first website. It was amazing. And you don't even know like the insides of what I do, but you're like, wow, it looks great. Like people automatically are encapsulated with that. And so whenever I look to my visual identity, I always want to make sure that it's pristine.
That makes a lot of sense. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And it's a huge opportunity to communicate who you are, what you're about, how you're going to conduct business. It sounds maybe counterintuitive. And I do know a lot of examples of brilliant and successful people that do not have the best looking website, but I do think it would only be better if they did.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And I worked for a 90-year-old restaurant group, and they weren't necessarily always hip or modern. And that owner was kind of rooted in the idea, hey, like if it's not broken, don't fix it. And he's not wrong, but until like it is broken. And so, there's always room for improvement.
So you say you've gone from managing kitchens to writing recipes for business. Could you please explain that for the audience?
Yeah. So I think everyone, and we were talking about it before we started, like everyone has a connection to restaurants. Everyone, maybe you've worked in restaurants, even if it's as short as 2 weeks. So people like to eat at restaurants. They can connect with the idea of what is a restaurant. And so now with the work that I do, and the moment I start saying, oh, I help you with your business systems and the project management and the CRM and the automate, people immediately, it goes over their head. They tune out. They're not really interested. But if I say, hey, I help you write a recipe to increase the value of your prefix promise, people are like, oh, that's interesting. I don't hear that language together. And then when I say, we break it down like a cooking recipe, people really get interested. And so now whenever I teach business owners how to build $1 million machine, I use the concept of a recipe, or specifically 5 recipes, and I break those down so that people have the step-by-step approach when it comes to implementing a system.
Could you explain the thinking behind the name $1 Million Machine?
Would you like $1 million machine?
I think the answer is yes, but what is the machine, and why $1 million? Why not $1 billion? Why not 10 million? Is it? I'd love to understand a little more about your thinking behind the name.
Well, one of the largest populations now in entrepreneur land, in the small business ecosystem, are 85% of small businesses are solopreneurs. And in America, that's the SBA statistics. Most of these businesses are not over $1 million. I would say between 40 and 50% are between 300K to 600K. Some people would say, oh, I like to keep things small. I like to keep things flexible. I call bullshit on all of that. I think people just don't have the capability to implement systems to take them to the next level. It's kind of this weird no man's land where they're too small that no one pays attention to them, but they also don't have the mindset or the capacity or the capabilities of like taking it to the next level. And so you have this huge population of people that don't have resources, or they don't know where to get to in order to break that 7-figure range. And so that's where I want to focus on. I want to help people get to that $1 million threshold.
I've also heard the first $1 million is the hardest. Like things start to change when you kind of shift past that 7-figure threshold. Do you think there's some truth to that?
I think there is. And I think, once you pass the 7-figure threshold, you now start to build a team, and you now have really high stakes with mouths to feed. And you're also kind of having to reinvent your internal infrastructure. All that until you get to the next kind of major threshold, which some people say $3 million. Like from 1 to 3 is kind of one of the hardest jumps that you make. And so it's a constant re-evolution.
For folks who may not remember our first podcast last year, or know you from other places, I'd like to talk a little bit about your background. You have some significant experience that I think would be interesting for the audience. Starting first with your chief of staff role at Solido in New York City, you supported fundraising activities for a Series A round. Could you talk a little bit about what went into that?
Yeah. So my background is or was in restaurants, but particularly on the tech side. I was really interested in technology and how it worked. And so while I was working in New York, I found this company, Solido. They were building a point of sale company. And so when I told him about my experience and background with systems engineering, he said, hey, come in and help me. And help me turned into be a chief of staff, which is a fancy title for doing a little bit of everything. And when it comes to fundraising, you really have to, at the click of a button, understand all sorts of different metrics in your company. How many leads do you have? How many leads per month? What's the conversion percentage rate? What is the MRR? What is the monthly recurring revenue per account? What is the tier of pricing each account wants to be in? The investors want to look at your forecast. You just have to understand so many different pieces of information, and you can't just run your business on Google Sheets, because this is all live information that's being pulled out of your CRM or your project management system. And companies that are running on Google Sheets, they're just not updating in a way that's sustainable to communicate this information.
What are some of the pressures of being at Series A that may be different from, say, seed, or like going from what we mentioned about the threshold to 7 figures going into Series B, do you think?
Well, I think Series A are when investors now give the signal that, okay, there is product market fit and there's more money. And like I said, when you hit 7 figures, you now start hiring a team. And so pre-seed to seed, maybe you go from 3 people to 8 people. And so your monthly expenses just maybe doubled or tripled or quadrupled. And so you really have to be able to significantly increase your throughput on sales and opportunity generation.
It sounds like it's a really crucial time to have systems in place rather than just winging it. Like you mentioned about Google Sheets, it's not necessarily what worked before isn't going to work later. What did you or what did you see the company doing to get like data from a place they were not yet at? Were they bringing in advisors? Were they looking at competitors? Could you explain a little bit about the strategy there?
Well, in that specific company, we were running on Salesforce, or we were trying to run on Salesforce. That was one of the things that I was tasked with getting set up. And if you're listening and don't know what Salesforce is a customer relationship management tool. And it's where you can enter in information about leads, about accounts, about dollars, about forecasts. And with Google Sheets, I mean, Google Sheets is a spreadsheet, and there aren't really many controls or permissions that you could implement. And so it was a lot of setting up software like Salesforce, um, or Pipedrive or Folk or whatever tools that you're using now, which would contribute to understanding all this information.
And a couple of positions before then, you were at Deloitte, also in the greater New York City area. And Deloitte is one of the top consulting firms in the world. And many people make a career out of that. What went into your calculus into determining to pursue a different path?
Well, I was really passionate about restaurants, and I was putting in a lot of hours, nights and weekends, with the hospitality division at Deloitte. To put it bluntly, I got screwed over. And I said, if the restaurant leader here doesn't want me to work with him, then I have no place to be here. So that was not too much calculus, more like a pre-algebra equation that I just said, the square hole is not fitting in the square peg is not fitting in the square hole anymore.
That seemed more like you were choosing a path out. I think many people these days around the world are finding the ground shifting beneath their feet with technological development, agents kind of taking over the workforce in some sense. What kind of maybe words of encouragement or dare I say advice would you give people that feel like they may no longer either by their choice or by the environment no longer be in the right place?
I mean, technology is going to continue evolving, but what I think we will not get to yet for a while, and maybe ever, like the humanity of, I had a passion in restaurants, systems engineering, technology, change management, and conscious leadership. Those are 6 areas that are very disparate. And I mean, people aren't creating startups at that, there are no products at that specific niche or intersection. And so I think people can turn to like what is truly their unique niche or their unique value proposition or skill set that they are honing in that is unique, a unique combination. And so earlier when I was saying, I now am using language such as recipes in the same dialogue as systems and digital transformation and small businesses, people aren't hearing that. People, that's new, that's unique. And like, is AI going to put me out of a job? I don't know, parts of it, but you can still fortify yourself with a unique combination.
You mentioned you were drawn to the restaurant industry. And when I think of a large institution or corporation like Deloitte, I think of many specialists hired in different domains to kind of allow the larger corporation to have many capabilities. Yet here you are focused, like laser focused on one particular domain. What do you think is an advantage and what do you think is a disadvantage in you going your own way versus being part of a larger institution?
While having a salary every 2 weeks is definitely an advantage. But I don't have to deal with the bullshit. I don't have to deal with the overhead, with the looking good, with the end of year review where they ask you how many hours are you putting in your local office contribution. I don't have to deal with that. You get to really choose a life that you can uniquely express. Now, the drawback to that is that there's no playbook to do that. There's no playbook or there's no process to create a life that is unique, that is a unique expression of who you are. And so there's some existential angst that comes with that. Like, there's no guarantee that like at Deloitte, if you would go to a happy hour, you would know there would be 70 people there, all with the shared mission. Here, as an entrepreneur, if you go to a happy hour, you don't know, like, it could be one person, 2 people, it could be 900 people. It's so unpredictable. And for some people, they can't deal with that level of unpredictability. We're all kind of control freaks in a sense. And like, if we don't have that certainty, then people can't manage.
Speaking of playbooks, you are the author of a new book, Newbie Lessons Learned while Cross-Pollinating My Life, Discovering My Passions, and Creating My Honey. Love the title. I often use cross-pollinating as a term for my career as well. What what have you discovered from cross-pollinating that you think some people are missing?
Well, it's that call into the like recognizing that every experience in their life contributes to their honey. So, a lot of people they don't believe that what they did was worth it, or they don't see how it's going to like get integrated back into whatever's next. And so that's where I, tell people they can, have faith that it will.
I think it's really surprising. Like Steve Jobs said, I think in the 2005 Stanford commencement speech, like looking back, all the dots line up. But at the time, it does seem kind of chaotic. I think as long as you're moving forward and like being productive, you'll find that you have unique skills and lessons. So what's like the main point that you would like readers to take away from this book?
Well, Newbie was a book I wrote a few years ago. The new book that really I want people to understand is that of Momentum Multipliers, where growth can be as simple as following a recipe. And most entrepreneurs believe that entrepreneurship is supposed to be crazy and overwhelming and chaotic, and they just can't accept that it could be as easy as following a recipe.
So tell us about this recipe.
So in Momentum Multipliers, they talk about 5 recipes to build your $1 million machine. And the first one is your transformation, which is that signature offer that you are sharing with the world. Most people are busy delivering a la carte specials, changing things on the fly to meet the needs of the customer. And I say, no, you need a prefix promise and stay focused on that. The second recipe is connection, which is building your relationships with your ecosystem. The third recipe is communication, which is about sharing your message with the world and telling them about the business that you are building and the world that you are creating. And most entrepreneurs know about these 3 recipes. They know about they know about a thing that they're offering, they know about connections, and they know about marketing. Where they fall is recipes 4 and 5. They never set up the organization required, which connects their tactics with how they do things, with their playbooks, with their tools, with their technology. And so because they don't have that, they never get to building up their teams. And because they never build up their teams, they're never reaching recipe number 5, which is actualization, which is when everyone lines up their personal purpose inside that of the organizations, which really brings the heartbeat to your company.
And how did you come up with the concept of these 5 recipes in the sequence that you did?
It's a great question. I think it's a combination of my experience, a combination of philosophy, also of. Have you read of the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins?
I don't think so.
So David Hawkins, he wrote this book, and he's a doctor that studied muscle kinesthetics, and he also studied like measuring energetic vibration. And so he says most people, we live in a world where most people are trying to force themselves into new possibilities. Instead, if you generate personal power from within to raise your emotional energy, you actually start to attract opportunities to you. And so when I look at businesses today, most businesses, they're kind of chasing, they like think that they need more leads, they need more external validate, like an external signal or stimulus, which will create the growth. And I say, no, you got to look within. You have to actually look at that core offer and start at like the very core of your business. And when you have a rock solid core, an offer that is original, that is unique, now you could tell your friends about it. You could tell your relationships, and now they will start telling their friends. Now the word gets out there. Now you're marketing, and now you have so much activity in your business. If you don't get it together, you're going to die of indigestion. And so that is what David Packard says. And so that's where recipe 4 and 5 kind of comes the whole systems dialogue.
Were you looking back at your career, some of the clients you had, some of the companies that you worked for with, and kind of seeing some patterns?
Yeah, I think so. I think we all look back. I think we all look back at our past and kind of see these patterns in hindsight.
So on the website, you have a few like highlights of clients that have gone through these 5 recipes. Christine has increased revenue 30% in 1 year. Um, Hugh tripled client capacity in less than 7 months. And Amanda improved internal efficiency in her team of over 30. Which of these is most impressive or surprising to you?
Well, Christine and Hugh are both solopreneurs, which is inspiring because, for the people that are listening, maybe that are solopreneurs, it doesn't take a massive change to create a difference. With Hugh, we turned his manual coaching offer into a course that he now used to deliver his coaching offer, but it was now kind of more of an automated experience, which it didn't take away the human side because you had the automated content delivery being supported by him showing up on these calls. And then Christine was less of a, also just looking at all the clients that she's working with, seeing that there's 8 different packages, saying, hey, like if you just have one package, it becomes a lot easier for you to deliver that. And so it's often these like small changes that people can make to that would create a big impact.
And speaking of like adaptation and evolution, um, you went from the previous podcast about a year ago. We were talking about the 6P framework. And then here we're talking about the 5 recipes. Is this an evolution? Does this complement it? Is this a repackaging? Could you explain to us, in the mind of not just a solopreneur, but you, the kind of evolution here, what seems like the evolution from the front side?
Have you heard of the expression that don't sell the journey, sell the destination?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So the idea being, you want to grow your business. You don't care about the details and what it means. You want more clients, you want more deeper relationships, you want more brand awareness. No one gives a shit about project management systems or CRM software or tags, or like they don't care about the system. They care about the growth. And so the 5 recipes is what people want. The 6 P's is what people get.
What would be your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs or professionals, like you mentioned, in terms of, say, cultivating patience or embracing curiosity?
Yeah, I think every day is a journey. And if you don't have a system in place, if you don't have a way of working, I said one of the benefits of working at a Deloitte earlier is that they give you a structure, they give you a process, they give you a way of operating. When you're an entrepreneur, you don't have that. And when you don't have that, you actually cannot be curious because you're freaking out about the 9 people you haven't followed up with. And you don't remember if they're in your texts and your emails and your WhatsApp. You don't remember it. But if you had a system in place, you could feel grounded. You could have the confidence that if 100 people showed up tomorrow, you would just put them through your box, put them through your system, and they would come out with the same experience on the other side.
And on your website, which we'll link to, your MDM, Million Dollar Machine acronym, .co, you've got a quiz that people can take for free, just like a 5-question quiz, takes less than 3 minutes. Can anyone take this? Is this for people that are pre-revenue? Is this for people that have a certain amount of revenue? Who is this for?
So this is not for pre-revenue. It's for people who have a clear understanding of how they're going to, of what is a revenue level they want to reach and how much they're willing to charge for their service. With those 2 numbers, we could basically build out the 6 numbers in your business, which include revenue per client or your price, number of clients, conversion percentage, number of leads, number of emails, and utilization rate. And so when people have these 6 numbers, an understanding of them, we're now able to point to each of the 5 recipes and say, hey, if you want to go from here to here, this is where you're going to need transformation. This is where you're going to need connection. This is where you're going to need this. And so it helps people understand the idea, especially going back to the whole restaurant analogy, like what are the experiences that they already are familiar with that they're going to need to integrate into their business to achieve what they want to achieve.
In your industry, are you seeing artificial intelligence change things drastically at this point?
It's definitely changing things, but most people are too busy being bothered by AI and not busy with actually understanding how their business is operating.
Okay, interesting. And you currently are a solopreneur, is that correct?
I have a team, but I am a solo owner business. Yes.
Okay. And as a solo owner business, could you explain a little bit about how you assembled your team? Because as maybe uninteresting as it seems, that's something I think a lot of people is a bit nebulous. Like, what do I actually need? How do I know if someone is worth hiring full time, part time, outsourcing, or maybe automating? Like we mentioned AI. What? How do you determine like who makes the team and how that team is formed?
Well, I definitely first start with like, what does the org chart of the future look like? So when we do that scorecard and we invite people to say, hey, what is your business going to look like 3 years from now? We kind of map out that org chart and then look at the roles that are necessary for that org chart. When people are doing this exercise for the first time, they find that they are in the seat of most of these roles. And so that already like builds a map of who are the people or what are the roles you need to bring in. Once you have the roles, you break down roles into responsibilities. And once you have the responsibilities, you now get to document how you do things. Because entrepreneurs are moving so fast, sometimes documentation looks like using a platform like Scribe so that you could quickly capture the procedures of the business. And then at the same time, we're also creating an onboarding program. And an onboarding program is basically teaching people what your company's about, who is the customer you're trying to serve, what is the transformation you're trying to create for them. And it's not the CEO like teaching a new hire this. This is all recorded content that pretty much is a course, an internal course for a new hire. And so it does there is a lot of work to it, but I actually just wrote an article on this specific topic about your onboarding. So I'm more than happy to share how you go about doing that, because putting together that onboarding program really helps you start to think about, okay, how do you welcome in these people so that they're feeling uh, empowered from day one.
This quiz that you have that founders or business owners can take once they kind of have an idea of the target or the destination they'd like to get to. Do you have something similar that you have new hires take to kind of see get some more data and documentation on where you might use them?
No, I mean, my assessment is they have to complete my course, is my assessment. For someone to work at our company, they must complete the foundation course that we have, the accelerator. Um, and at the end, we invite all students of this course to ask them to choose their own next step. Do they want to upgrade as a client into our membership? Do they want to certify in our content as an internal team member? Do they want to certify this and teach it to their clients? And so that course is really the first step.
What are your goals for MDM?
My goals are to have 1,000 multipliers in my community. And what that means are people that have taken this course and that are either implementing it in their own business or in other people's businesses.
Currently, you're over 100. Is that right?
Currently, we have 100 people who've taken the course.
Great. So you're well on your way. I think it's probably one of those things where it starts going faster the more people you get through it.
Yes, avalanche effect.
And where can people pick up this new book?
So people can go to build.yourmdm.co and they can grab a copy there.
build.yourmdm.co. We'll put that in the chat. And is there anything that we didn't touch on that you feel we should highlight?
Yeah, there's this idea that uh, building business systems, it's not an overnight thing.
Mhm.
It doesn't need to be a massive change. James Clear talks about 1% daily wins. I actually made my own version of that where you're creating 10% weekly wins. So if you're actually just improving a little bit more, you're putting in a little bit more effort, you're working on your business a little bit more, you're creating 10% wins every week, the compounding effect of that is 142 times greater than where you were at the start. And so you could massively change your life. You just got to get started.
Definitely. Yeah, fully agree. Well, congratulations on the baby, the book, and the booming business. Another great website, another great conversation. It's a pleasure speaking to you again, Ernesto.
You too, David. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.